Elite Facts presents
8 Creepiest Monsters from Classic Literature. 8. Mr. Hyde, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This classic monster from literature was first featured in Robert Louis Stevenson's 1886 novella, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Mr. Hyde is the literal representation and embodiment of the darker side of the human soul. The novel tells the tale of Dr. Henry Jekyll, who has covered up a secret life of evil deeds, but is constantly haunted by them. He drinks a potion that he created and turns into Edward Hyde, thus making his secret past life come to the forefront of his current one. Hyde becomes stronger as time goes on and eventually takes over. In one of his nightly forays, he kills Sir Danvers Carew in a murderous rage. He is then hunted by Inspector Newcomen of Scotland Yard and friends of Jekyll's, including Dr. Lanyon, Mr. Utterson, and Richard Enfield, as well as Jekyll's butler, Poole. Because of this, Hyde tries to recreate the formula, but after several failed attempts to do so, he realizes that he will be Hyde forever if he doesn't find one soon enough. He then writes a testament before drinking poison, killing them both. Stevenson focuses largely on the duality of human nature, but the novella has also been interpreted as a representation of Victorian social standards versus sexuality, or also the need of a homosexual in those times to create a double life. 7. The Giant Squid, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So, as if giant squids weren't scary enough, the book 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea takes the giant squid to a whole nother level. Captain Nemo's underwater ship, Nautilus, is equipped with the world's most advanced weaponry for the 1800s, including electrified bullets. But near the end of the novel, Nautilus is swarmed by a school of pulpos, which translated from French means octopi. It is almost always translated as giant squid because one pulpe in particular becomes entangled in Nautilus's propellers, and the crew has to go topside and battle it with axes, harpoons, and knives. The book's writer, Jules Verne, never gives the squid's exact size, but implies it, quote, one of those animals only 6 feet long would have tentacles 27 feet long. That would make a formidable monster. While battling it, the squid manages to grab up one crewman and drown him, then devour him before the others chop off its entangling tentacles and drive it away. The real horror of this monster is that Verne was always interested in being realistic in his science fiction, so, as you'd expect, what he wrote was probably the most realistic scenario you could expect when encountering one of these creatures if provoked. Its tentacles are lined with serrated teeth and sharp hooks that can slice human skin like a razor. They have the largest beak of all animals, large and strong enough to bite off a human hand. The largest recorded specimen weighed 1,091 pounds. 6. Medusa. One of the most popular monsters from Greek mythology, it's quite easy to see why Medusa belongs on this list, as she is without a doubt the purest entry here in terms of physical horror. Medusa is said to be the daughter of sea gods Phorcys and Ceto, and in the original version of the mythos, she and her 3 sisters, who also had snake hair and were ugly beyond sin, always existed in their monstrous form. It's the late edition, popularized by Ovid in his Metamorphoses, that gives Medusa the backstory of once being so beautiful that Poseidon raped her in Athena's temple. This infuriated Athena, who promptly transformed Medusa into a snake-haired hag, so hideous that even looking into her eyes would turn any living thing into solid stone. 5. Cilia, the Odyssey. Continuing on with the theme of Greek mythology, Cilia is also one of the great stories. The story is a metaphor similar to that of Daedalus and Icarus for following the middle ground and not veering too far one way or the other. In the Odyssey, Circe informs Odysseus that his route will take him through the Strait of Cilia and Charybdis. Charybdis is a huge whirlpool that will sink his ship. It will be better, thus, for him to sail closer to Cilia and lose a few men rather than all of them. This he does, and Homer sings, quote, gasping they squirmed as Cilia swung them up her crag and into her cavernous mouth. She gobbled them up raw, howling and flailing their arms at me. Cilia's appearance is horrid beyond reason. 4 eyes, 6 necks stretched long like hungry half-feathered chicks, huge, nasty heads with 3 rows of ragged shark teeth in each. 12 tentacle legs and a cat's tail with 6 dog heads blistered out around her waist. Needless to say, this beast is a serious case of nightmare fuel. but is definitely something worth reading if you like a good monster story. 4. Pennywise the Clown, Stephen King's It. Yeah, we're not joking. Now, let's be honest, the miniseries/film It wasn't perfect. Sure, it was an entertaining film, but it left out a whole lot of content that was important to the novel's story. Tim Curry's portrayal in the film version is outstanding, but the book is 100 times better. Now, in terms of supernatural or extraterrestrial entities, this is probably Stephen King's best work. Pennywise is the name the monster takes on when it's in its clown form, in hopes that it would lure children to him with his somewhat friendly appearance. It's said that it has been around for millions of years and arrived on Earth from an extraterrestrial origin. It appears to a person in the form of whatever most terrifies him or her. If a person, especially a child, does not know at first to be afraid of it, it appears as a clown to lure the person closer. It hibernates for some 25 to 30 years and wakes up during some horrible catastrophe or act of violence. It assumes the form of anything it wants in order to terrify human beings, especially children, whose fears are easy to manifest. But as we've previously stated, its most common disguise is as a clown carrying balloons that float against the wind. Its first scene is the infamous sewer scene, in which it stands up in a rainy sewer while little Georgie Denbrow is looking for his toy sailboat. Pennywise offers him the boat and balloons, and when Georgie reaches in to get it, Pennywise rips his arm out of the socket and devours it with horrible, ragged lion teeth. Yeah, they don't show you that bit in the film, do they? It's just implied that poor little Georgie dies and then it moves on. All it wants is to eat people, and people taste best when they're terrified. It delights in causing as much psychological, emotional, and physical agony in people as it possibly can. The human mind can, only in terms of fear, approximate Pennywise's true physical form. The most common human fear is arachnophobia, and thus, at the end, to the grown-up children who pursue it into the sewers, it appears as a very fast, gigantic black spider with enormous fangs. Yeah, again, that's something they don't tell you in the film. No wonder most people were so damn confused with the film's ending. 3. Count Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's Dracula. What more do we really need to say? Well, we obviously need to say a little bit more, or else this video will be much shorter. So, for those of you who've been living under a rock your whole life, Dracula is one of the greatest icons of horror in almost all forms of media. But it all started with Bram Stoker's novelization, written way back in 1897. A Transylvanian lord and magician, the undead Count Dracula is the origin of the modern vampire, the charming, refined, yet menacing monster whose true nature is only revealed while on the hunt for human prey. Dracula is yet another monster that plays to our most basic of fears, as he'll stop at nothing to get what he most desires: fresh human blood. He possesses overwhelming strength and is nearly impervious to harm. He's a trickster, capable of walking among us and luring us into his wicked schemes. Dracula's terror is not limited to fiction either, as it seems likely that he is at least partially inspired by stories of Vlad Dracula, the Impaler, a 15th century European tyrant with the nasty habit of impaling people, a method of execution that ensured a slow and agonizing death. 2. The Jabberwocky, Through the Looking Glass. When it comes to fiction, it's hard to not mention Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass, the sequel to his most famous work, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. The main antagonist of this book is in the form of a monstrous nightmare known as the Jabberwocky. The reason he's so horrifying is because of Carroll's masterful description of him using blends, portmanteaus. He concocted new words throughout his famous poem, The Jabberwocky, to lend an air of nonsense, but with that nonsense comes fear. The creature, whose jaws that bite and claws that catch, resembled a chimera, and he had the body of a dragon and a catfish-like head. Carroll's description of the man-eating beast painted a colorful but grotesque picture of the creature's movements and sounds. We don't want to run into anything in the woods that whiffles or burbles. 1. Cthulhu, The Call of Kulu. You knew it was coming. How could you not have Cthulhu on a list like this? Back in the day, H.P. Lovecraft was, and still is, considered one of the greatest horror novelists of all time, as he wrote such classics like The Reanimator, The Necronomicon, and of course, The Call of Cthulhu, just to name a few. Cthulhu could be said to be the sum of all things we find frightening, An alien from the stars, he is a being of darkness and madness dwelling deep beneath the ocean, both reptilian and octopus-like in appearance. Now, alone, Cthulhu is an incredible, horrifying monster in his own right. However, what makes him just that much more terrifying is that he also has many frightening minions to call upon at his disposal, ranging from mad human cults to aquatic deep ones to fiendish and incomprehensible alien life forms. Now, it is said that Cthulhu is asleep, but that is always accompanied by the ominous promise that he will one day return to public sight, giving everyone the sense of impending doom until he finally returns, and readers are left to imagine how horrible an event that could be, considering how terrifying just his minions are. Interestingly, Cthulhu is a very popular figure in pop culture, being referenced by everything from South Park to Metallica songs to World of Warcraft. It just goes to show how interested we are in our own fears. Can you think of any creepy monsters from classic literature we missed? Tell us about your favorites in the comments below, and thank you for watching.
Don't forget to like us and subscribe for more elite facts.